1, 2, 3, 4.
Answer. You must. If you're in need of some correction. Dire need of correction.
Just because you're paranoid, it doesn't mean they're not out to get you. Vyzygoth's Grassy Knoll continues.
Now, that reminds me of Tom Hartman. Something he said the other day. He's out of Oregon. It had to do with ADD being a choice issue. Like, for instance, somebody that will make choices based on desire over like some responsibility issue, like, oh, I need to clean out this, sewage pit, but I'd rather do this over here, so they go do that over there. I mean, that's an extreme example, but it's that kind of thing where then that kind of defines why they are then labeled attention deficit, and then a drug is prescribed that will help them focus on what? On the thing that they don't want to do, which is kind of what it's great for a New World Order kind of setup.
Mm-hmm. And real quick, I just want to say to you, this is another thing that I didn't ask questions about, but it was another brick in the wall as far as the ascension of my learning process. And that is back in the 70s, I had a friend, again, this guy I worked for, whose daughter was thought to have had ADD. And they didn't call, they called it a lot of things back then. But one of the things they suggested was Ritalin. And what he saw Ritalin do to his daughter, he said, I can't do it. It's like some kind of limp puppet without a puppeteer sitting in the corner, you know what I mean? So he was really proactive and very ahead of his time because he started to seek people who could give him advice about how to control this. And I think she did have a little brain damage also. And then, and that's how I started to learn about what artificial preservatives do to people and, processed foods and all this other stuff. And the fact that they started to really demonize Ritalin throughout the 70s. So when it came roaring back in the 90s, I'm like, what did I miss here? If it was a no good thing in the 70s, why is it a good thing now? And of course, now I understand why. I mean, it's part of the plank, of a brave new world. But like I said, I didn't think much of it when it first came back. I just said like, well, you know, it was a stinker then, it's a stinker now. Now I know why they brought it back with flying colors.
I've got a couple notes here. Let's see. I liked your garbage challenge. I forget who you were talking to. It was a post I think you made or said perhaps on the air about the garbage thing. It was you were talking about people turning in the movement, I guess, the Patriot movement, flipping.
Yeah.
A lot of that lately, and how people should just get a job, you know, throwing garbage cans instead of compromising their ideals. And I laughed at that, and I'm thinking I'm going to really try. I'm going to try to do your garbage challenge. I'm going to try to. I'm really going to bear down here and see if I can get a garbage job.
Well.
Just to write, and I'll write, maybe write a book about it or something.
Well, first of all, one of the secret things I wanted to
I'd have to pass a drug test first.
Well,
so I'll have to put it off for a couple of months. Because I went up to Canada, and somebody said, let's go in a cafe. This cafe, it's really cool. I go in, and there's all this odd smoke in the air. And I picked up, I'm sure I probably picked up a large dose of this smoke.
Oh, what's
secondhand smoke.
Yeah.
Which would cause me to perhaps fail a drug test. And so if there's any reason at all to be doing this kind of research, let me be the first to say, not that I do it, I don't smoke, but for those that do, think about what a benefit it would be to keep at it and get some real rights, some real civilization where you could, experience those things in the freedom of a cafe down the street.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's another whole show, too, about where we were so close to decriminalizing. Oregon was one of the states I think was in the forefront of this. And then they turned around and just, demonized the grass more than they ever had done even in the days of the 70s. It was nuts. But I want to tell you one of my secret ambitions, one of the jobs that I guess I'll never have, now that I'm getting too old for it, but I always wanted to be, I wanted to work on a garbage truck for a while. I wanted to be a sanitation engineer. And it just never worked out.
I have the same thing. I love it. I have a fascination with going to the dump because I do a lot of it in my job, and the people are great there. At least in Seattle, they're the friendliest around. And I think it would be a good job.
We had a landscaper in Teaneck, New Jersey, and the landscapers would go out on unemployment for the most part for the winter months. But he hooked up on a garbage truck, and what happened was he got this really ritzy route in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, and in that neighborhood, he was some of his clients were the Isley Brothers of old, R&B soul fame, and also Stevie Wonder. And so what happened was he used to bill himself, in the wintertime as garbage man to the stars. At any rate, if you're gonna throw garbage cans, let it be a really Tony neighborhood.
Well, I have a good friend who's a gardener for the Stars. He was. Well, now I can't tell the story because they'll know who it is.
Right. Okay.
Well, now it would have been a good one. I think I mentioned it before. It had to do with Kurt Cobain.
Well,
anyway.
Let me segue into this because I'll leave the barnyard bromides and anecdotes after this. But I like horticulture. I always have liked planting stuff and growing things, and I just if I could have sustained that I would have but it just didn't work out. But I mean even to this day, if I ever go up north, I don't want another inside job. I just can't. I don't want to do it anymore. So anyway, where am I going with this? I got friendly with a guy who was running the grounds at St. Leo University, and he was telling me he was going to go back up north. And I said, well, where's back up north? He goes, well, the Hudson Valley. Well, man, my eyeballs fell out of my head because that's where I want to go. And I said, oh, you're going to go up to the Hudson Valley? He goes, yeah. I said, boy. He goes, well, listen. He goes, I'll let you know wherever I land. And you can send me an email if you're ever coming up. Maybe we can work something out. I said, great. And he did get a job as running the grounds of an estate of a wealthy family on the east side of the Hudson. I never asked them who it was, but what a hoot it would be if I could wind up being a gardener, for the Rockefellers.
Say that again?
If I could wind up being a gardener for the Rockefellers.
Well, they have, I probably mentioned this, several hundred waiters, or what do we call them?
Servers.
Servers in each home, each Rockefeller heir.
Mm-hmm.
It's several hundred. Are we ready to get back into December 2007?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we did the first week last time. Now this second week was really biggie, and you could almost, you can sense that was the last hurrah before everybody went on vacation. All the agents or whatever, they had to do some ops. So they made sure to time. Libby dropped his appeal on the 9th. Scooter Libby, which would be a blemish, a problem. Oh, I got to find my problem list again, don't I?
Do you need a second to do that?
Well, let me see here. I hope not. I hope I don't need very many seconds to find it. So, and the problems that second week for the elites would have been the Libby appeal, the embarrassment of it, the Haggard shooting. Oh, Haggard is a problem. So that's what we had the next day, or actually that day.
What do you call the Haggard shooting?
Well, that's when there was a shooting in his church, a high-profile deal. And the Diana probe in England has kind of been an ongoing thing through a lot of this stuff. Kids' health care, Bush vetoing it would be something that we'll want to play down. The Sears Tower trial, which was an embarrassment, I think, going after those dudes that sort of a whole fake operation that they would have to play down, and the CIA torture tapes were something that had to be dealt with. So those are all big issues, and so we have a lot of big, misdirections. We had the Haggard shooting at the New Life Church in Colorado, Colorado Springs.
Mm-hmm.
Youth with a Mission. There was a shooting there as well. 2 places. There was that female guard who. There was a guy who said he got shot with buckshot. There were some oddities in that shooting at the church, from what I could tell. The female guard who kind of went into a trance mode or SWAT mode and killed the guy. And yet somebody else got hit with a shotgun blast from the wrong direction, like there was an additional shooter or something. I saw him on TV. I don't know if it ever made it into the official story.
Mm-hmm.
The pig farmer cannibal dude in Vancouver was found guilty that day. That's the 9th. That's the guy that was eating people. Did you ever hear that story?
No, I think no.
Oh, he was picking up prostitutes and people like that, and feeding them to his pigs and so forth. It's kind of an embarrassment in a way because they should have caught the guy. It was kind of blatant, and it was one of those cases where they just didn't care about the victims enough.
Yeah.
Evel Knievel had his funeral. That got some airplay. And then the next day on the 10th is a Monday. University study blames the sun for global warming. That would be something that they would have an issue with because chemical companies are pushing global warming. Gaddafi is in France buying arms, nuclear technology. That's a little threat, bringing in some terror. Big WAMU layoffs. That's a big bank. Conrad Black gets 6 years. That's a real embarrassment to the elites. On the next day, the 11th, the Algerian UN offices are bombed. They blame Al-Qaeda. Las Vegas, 6 students are shot getting off of a bus. There's your school shooting with the bus involved as well. The 12th, Diana's driver was found not drunk. According to a waiter, well, I guess he wasn't found. That was some testimony that was damning, pointing toward a conspiracy.
Let me throw something in also if I could. Of course, you know that they're in some kind of trial right now, and I don't know which side wants to, DNA Paul to find out, obviously whether he was or he wasn't drunk. But out of all this that's gone back and forth about was there something more afoot, and of course these hearings are going to come out and find out there was no conspiracy. So why would they even do it? I don't know. But did you notice one thing? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. In all of this, I've not heard nor read, and I'm asking you if you have, not one thing about the fact that the tunnel they were in had video cameras in them, and that night they suddenly didn't work. They've never said a thing about why there isn't any footage. So, and I want to, but that never comes up. It never comes up. I mean, of course they have video to monitor the thing. It's an extensive tunnel, and you want to see what's going on. If there's some kind of wreck or whatever, or a disabled vehicle. So I mean, but that's.
I remember at the time there was just a massive amount of bogus, or not bogus, but just really damning evidence that it was a setup. I mean, it was really so many witnesses and things, and they've all kind of just disappeared.
Yeah, and where I'm going with that is the guy was not drunk. They went in that tunnel. They had a setup car in front of them. I know that we're not doing a show dedicated to that. But whether or not there was automatic control of his vehicle that he was not aware of, that car disappeared. And whether there was a stun flash that blinded him, prior to this whole thing happening, before they started playing ping pong off all the walls.
Well, I think it does connect to the conspiracies we're talking about here because of the British connection, the strong British influence on a lot of the stuff, including Mothman country. The British own the mines, coal mines, and the Bushes are related to them, and lots of just a ton of reasons why what goes on in England. It's almost like news that happens there. It's drilled into us that somehow that's affecting us. That's our problem. And if people come to identify the two together in their minds, so they can have an event here or there and influence the other country quite strongly. And you were kind of alluding to that earlier before we went on about the globalness of 911 and how that really was a global op, not just to benefit us.
Sure.
I think you're absolutely right.
Oh, no, terror, I keep looking at this book, and I got to get back into it, but it's so verbose, it begs me not to read it. I've read excerpts of it, but I'm looking at Leon Trotsky's Terrorism and Communism, and the use of terrorism. Terrorism was the last card that was ever really going to be played. I mean, you could say that it was used in the Red Scare with the communists in the 50s and all that stuff, but it wasn't really any hitting, there was no shooting, there was no body counts. Now you've got a situation. The greatest boogeyman in the world is terrorism because it can be anywhere at any time or not at all. You can freak people out about the fact that it might happen, and of course, that's just as good as, in a sense, as it happening. But when it happens, it takes lives. Yeah, and so that's why we got the thing in London with the subway bombing and the bus bombing, and you got Madrid, and it's going to keep on going, and Bali and everything else, because it's going to be used by extensions of those who wish a world government to rein in the freedoms of all nations wherever they are. Once they're all constrained, now you got an easier job of amalgamating them all. Yeah, and I was saying that to you. You're right. I mean, Andy, I've said it before. The people who are in the 9/11 Truth movement and also are like thinking that a world government is good, if they can't figure out the connection between the two, they should not even open their mouths about 9/11. So, yes, the globalness of it all.
Well, before I finish out that week. Well, let me finish out that week, and then I'll come back. Well, let me just say, while you were just talking about Diana and the connection and why that maybe thinking, well, that didn't have a connection. But here's it's interesting because one of the things that came up that's in the next book, Mothman 3, is I was interviewing a skeptic, an old friend of mine, and I was talking about this Reader's Digest compilation book I got, and how you can often, there's intelligence connections to Reader's Digest. So when they put out this compilation, I was like, wow, these particular 4 books seem to be related, and they were reviewing or having excerpts from the Leighton, one of the Leighton sisters who grew, their family's from Charleston, involved in Jonestown. It was her story about being at Jonestown. And they reviewed a book called Rocket Boys, which a movie has been made about, which is about West Virginia boys doing some rocket science. And they became, actual scientists. And a book on J.D. Rockefeller called Titan, and a book on Princess Di. I was thinking I can definitely see the 3-year-old West Virginia, and then why is Die there? I mean, it's clear that they lumped those three together for a reason. And why is Die also in there? And is it just because of the British, involvement in West Virginia? I don't know.
But I mean, obviously people would say, well, mass consumption would dictate which Reader's Digest is a organ of. That which is just it's a hot topic, and worthy of inclusion now. Like it always is, Andy, though, but behind the curtain is there a wink and a nod as to why those choices.
Yeah. Continuing on with the 12th, after that Die article about her driver, Korea, they had a story about a glow-in-the-dark cat being cloned. And I thought that was put out to sort of counter another story that came out that day, which was that Merck's had a vaccination shortage. I just wrote kids vaccine shortage. I'm not sure, of the details of it, but I would say that one kind of glorifies pharmaceutical work, that they're always moving forward with cloning and so forth. They're never going to go too far and do it with humans, but we're going to do it with every animal under the sun and in every variation, and spend billions of dollars on mapping all the genomes. We're never going to use it on humans, that's their stick.
Right.
And so, anyway, but that day, that was the same day that Bush vetoed the kids' health care for the second time.
But it's all for the kids, yeah.
So all those lumped together just makes you want to puke, really. So nothing really happened the next day that I noticed, and nothing really happened that weekend other than the Sears Tower trial collapsed, the terror trial. And then Bush threatened judges about the CIA tapes. Don't ask me for the CIA tapes. And I started to see in February, that's the next month. But I will note that at this point, and up until, all year, things kind of were happening in the beginning, in the beginnings of the weeks and all over the weekends. And then it shifted in February to things were happening more the other way toward the ends of the weeks. And I'm not sure why. So, that's that week. Any other comments on that week?
Nope.
Okay, next week, 16th, New York Times. Bush wanted AT&T spying 2 weeks into his administration. So, the whole thing that it was because of 911 is bogus. They were doing it just because they wanted to, to start the machinery rolling.
Andy, let me ask you this, though. And I mean, let's all of this be real. Whatever he wanted, whatever they are asking to do now, look, I mean, this is just a mere formality.
They're doing it anyway, but it is taking that step, to really formalize all of these.
Right, and get a promoter.
The fascistic, I guess, things you could say almost. On the 17th, Monday, the House passes $516 billion spending bill. Bush Sr. revisits Skull and Bones. He goes back to the Skull and Bones headquarters.
Harvard.
And that is first quarter moon.
Oh, it's Yale. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Tuesday the 18th, Turkey bombs Iraq. The letter about Prince Charles threatening Diana with a car wreck. Or no, it's her letter saying that she felt like he was going to kill her in a car wreck. Was read in court. I mean, is there any more damning evidence than that? An authentic letter written by the person killed saying someone's going to kill me in a car wreck? I mean, why doesn't this stuff get more press? I mean, it got some press, obviously, but.
Yeah, well, the paranoid delusions of an unhappy woman, yeah.
So, what do you have next day? A fire at the White House. There was a small fire at the White House. So that's, even though it disappears from the screen, nothing else happened that day. That was, good enough, I guess, to carry them through the day. Scaring people and so forth. Although the Navy saved a 14-year-old girl that day. That was a big story. Navy is good. The 20th, New Orleans protests on housing after the flood. Bush may face CIA hearings on the tapes. The DHS spy satellites are turned on. Homeland Security. Coke ads in Russia are labeled satanic by the Russians.
By the Russians what? The Russian Orthodox Church? Or?
That's a good question.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and revisit that. So next week is the Christmas weekend. We have SeaTac Seattle is now profiling airport flyers. They're sending people around the airport to just watch people and ask them questions. Called SPOT, S-P-O-T. On the 23rd, Tony Blair becomes a Catholic. Next day, full moon, 24th is Christmas, and there's no terror whatsoever.
What do you know? Funny how that goes.
Yeah, on the 26th, the tiger kills the boy at the San Francisco Zoo, and then somebody sends me an article by a guy named Pandolfi, P-A-N-D-O-L-F-I, linking tigers and surveillance by the Defense Intelligence Agency and Use Electric. On the 27th, Pakistan's Bhutto is assassinated. Muslims blamed. 6 people are found dead in Carnation, Washington, which is near Seattle. There's a mall shooter story from 2 years before. They bring up the Hawkins shooting and talk about how he wasn't on his meds, and he was, which is weird because a couple of months later, I think where they decided, okay, let's start pushing the med angle, because up until now it's kind of ignored the whole fact that these school shooters are on meds and so forth. So rather than deal with it head on and honestly, they start talking about it, and then a couple months later, when we get up to it, we'll find that they're saying that the shooters are killing people because they're not taking their meds.
Yeah, right. There is definitely yardage to be gained there. And you know what other thing struck me though too? Was that, of course somebody would say, well, anyone's wife or girlfriend would say this, which I think is lame. It's not true that everybody would say this. I would say that, somebody's girlfriend or wife, somebody who's...
That he wasn't a danger normally, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know if we said this in another show, but it just seemed like, it's like, she goes, that's not him. That's not him. And she's crying. I believe her. So now you're wondering too if he's also a Manchurian candidate.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and also, that's when home sales really started plunging. Big story on that. And shoot to kill in Pakistan order is given. I guess that's when they were starting to have issues over the assassination that day of Bhutto. So that's a lot for a day. That's a lot. The 28th, Bin Laden, wouldn't you know, releases a new tape. So they're really hitting us hard right after Christmas.
What was the background they used for that one, Coney Island? What a cheap-ass production. It's just so ridiculous. Oh, all right, never mind.
Yeah, and then here we have a Pope story that day. The Pope sets up exorcism squads for each diocese. And the Teresa Duncan suicide, which was probably a murder, was blamed on the internet by Newsweek. On the 29th, Saturday, Bin Laden tape warns against unity government in Iraq. Novak says the CIA is undermining Bush in an op-ed column. It's interesting.
Oh, we would hope so. That's what the CIA does.
Okay. And I broke Ghost In-House there on the 28th, that weekend. There was a ghost. We were having some kind of ghost stuff. What was it at? Oh, I heard it. I actually heard somebody come in. I heard the door open. We've had some of this before, and it always happens at particular times. And
what do you mean particular times?
Doorknobs bent. I've had slammings. Poltergeists are happening down there, and I go down. There's nothing there.
But what are we talking about times? Are we talking about times of the year, time of day?
Well, I've actually correlated it to things that are happening with people in my family. Not necessarily me. But I will hear or experience some kind of poltergeist or ghost. And so when that happens now, I get really vigilant about what's going on, and start looking at the people around me and checking everything out.
So you're saying it's geared somewhat, you think, with or to events in your familial events?
again, I live right next to a spot which is very similar to where I lived in West Virginia, which is an old schoolhouse. They often have paranormal activity. Keel talked about it. Other researchers have talked about it. And it's just the presence of all that energy, I think, from people being there over the years. Or they locate schools in special spots, too. I think that happened way back when. You know, a lot of them were add-ons to churches, and the churches were built on a sacred spot. And this used to be an Indian village, and I've had several different psychics and things talk about what a strong place it is energetically. So I just think it's like par for the course here that you would get some supernatural behavior occurring whenever there's emotional upset or something in the people around. It affects people in the neighborhood too.
I'll just say, let me just throw this in here because this is just how we felt when we went to high school in Teaneck High School. It was a 3-year school, sophomore to senior. They had a junior high school setup, and the building is beautiful. It's very like Tudorish, I guess you could say. Brick and cement affectations and turrets, very castle-like, if you will. But for whatever reason, there's gargoyles all over the joint. And we never thought too much about it. To us, it was just like, well, that's strange.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned the gargoyles last time.
Well, I mentioned the gargoyles from that house on the corner here, where the guys get the
four. Is this a different one?
Oh, yeah, no, this is where I go to high school. And in fact, in my yearbook, I got to scan some of these photos and send them out to you. So you can take a look at what kind of architecture that is. So I'm wondering now, who commissioned this kind of stuff? Who worked on this building? I mean, obviously it's masons. I mean, true masons. I mean, the craft masons. Well, that doesn't make any sense either. Well, but I will tell you this. In our junior year, we used to leave a twig or something in the crash doors on the exit in the gym. So we could go in and sneak in and play either not roller hockey, but we would play, street hockey on our feet, or basketball. And this was the baseball team that did that. And we would go in there, and I'll just say this: we knew we were doing something wrong, and of course we were in the era of Leave It to Beaver, so we really knew we were doing something wrong by just being there. And yet, you know what? There was something creepy about a desolate school building. You know what I mean? When we went in there, it was just like creepy.
And there's also one in Liberty, West Virginia, which is supposed to be that vortex. There's an abandoned school there. And an abandoned castle, kind of big old hotel thing.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about, it embracing perhaps the energy of all those who have come through there. It did make me wonder because, in a way, it was kind of icky that we were there. And then, like I said, but then that whole building and all that, festooned it on the outside. Like I said, I'll scan these photos off from the yearbook. My yearbook from '69, I'll send them to you. I think you'll find them. In fact, I got to take a look at them again because I haven't thought about this.
All right. Well, let's try to do January one fell swoop. I don't have much for it, but I'm going to just reel them off and then say whatever. And then I don't really have anything for the first 2 weeks. Probably, I'm sure stuff happened, but I just was on vacation. So, but that third week, the White House came out. The White House had taped over their torture emails, the emails about the torture that they were doing, and they're still covering that one up. So that was a big one for them, I think. And so, what else problems did they have? Well, there's some Wall Street issues that they need to work on. Obama is tied up now with Hillary. There's some problems with Bush's fiscal policies. He's caught lying about 1,000 times. Somebody did a study on him. There's what else do we have? Some Gaza issues. And so they sort of bring in the Oscar, just the writers strike starts happening, which is kind of a good diversion. But we all had this Stevensville, Texas UFO story coming out on the 14th, which sort of took up quite a bit of, got a lot of mileage. They got a lot of mileage out of it. The FDA approved cloned meat on the 15th. There's a cloning story again.
Oh, God. That was horrible, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, we should say so.
Oh, no, there was also the one about them shipping out tainted beef and somehow, some way, was also okay to send to like New Jersey schools.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That was a big one. On the 16th, New York Stock Exchange acquired American Stock Exchange. Yeah, just noted. Hillary and Obama are now in the dead heat. Stocks take a big dive. The 17th, Bush announces his fiscal policy. There's chicken abuse at Tyson Chickens.
They're dead. How can they abuse?
There's a crackdown in Kenya. And then the fourth week, big stock drop on the 21st, which is MLK's birthday. Gaza wall to Egypt is blown up on the 22nd. Thousands of people flood the breach to buy stuff. The U.S. deficit is announced $250 billion. 23rd, it's announced that Bush lied about 1,000 times on his Iraq policies, on Iraq issues. There's a UFO sighting on the 26th in Anaheim, which is a place we went to film.
Let me ask you something.
Nothing else until the 2nd of February.
Wait, hold on a second. Let me just ask you about the sighting.
We will start over with.
Was there a description of the craft?
Which one? Oh, no. I'm not sure it's easy to get. I just didn't write it that, I think this particular calendar is not in any detail other than to compare the stories.
And let me just hit you before you go to February. The reason I'm saying is somebody sent me a file from Steve Quayle, who I trusted once in the summer, and it was bogus, his information. Again, I don't consider him like a bad guy or anything, but he has people on who apparently are connected, and you don't use names and all that. All I'm going to say is they were talking about the reality of spycraft that they called delta-shaped. Now, what does delta-shaped mean to you? Triangular, would that be correct?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And he was saying that they are doing surveillance off the shores of, the United States. And the reason, I could believe that. I assume these guys would be right about that. I don't know, if there's some kind of true problem arising in, say, South or Middle Central America. So here's where I'm going. Do you remember when you sent me that clip about the UFO in Pasco County that was seen at 7 a.m.? 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm saying is because it was 6 a.m. and somebody got some footage of it, and they did a still from it, and it was delta-shaped. You could not see anything.
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm saying, well, there could be something to it. And remember, too, not only might a craft not be around here because of, it could even be drug interdiction, although I can't imagine they really want to catch anybody. But also because we have the Dill Air Force Base down here, and that's a heavy-duty player in this war in Iraq, which I think they want most people in the area to forget about. So the reason I'm asking you this is because I hear this from this one guy, Steve Quayle, the other day. I think about what you told me. I go to the website out of Tampa TV, I think it was Channel 10, and sure enough, it's a delta-shaped craft. So
I think all the triangular ones are just government craft. I don't even really pay attention to those.
Okay.
Shall I move on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First, February, what are the problems? First week, the Princess Di thing is still going on. Obama is surging. Exxon is fighting Venezuela on some things. There's some stock drop issues. Waterboarding is starting to come out, and they're going to have to deal with that. And the eavesdropping issue is still there. That Bush wants retroactive immunity for the phone companies, so they have to continue to save. They have to save the eavesdropping program from attack. Okay, so on the 2nd we have a mall shooting. That's a good one to get people's minds off of those kinds of things. It's the Tinsley Park Chicago mall shooting. And also that day there's damaging of internet cables supplying Lebanon, Palestine. Those two. So they don't have internet there for a while. Underwater cables are cut. Third, Turkey bombs Kurdish Iraq. Willie Nelson says 911 was an inside job. There's a movie is made that makes assassins look good, and Angelina Jolie's in it. The ads come out. I don't even know the name of it. The fourth, Bush budget is $3 trillion. Cuts Medicare. I'm sorry. $3 trillion. Global warming stories come out in the AP. Melting ice stories. Microsoft and Yahoo start working on a deal or fighting. On the 5th, Aetna drops anesthesia from its coverage. Hillary versus Obama, Super Tuesday that day. Kenya and Chad have riots. Tornadoes kill 47 in Tennessee. There's that number 47. I don't know if it stayed at 47. U.S. admits to waterboarding. Stocks drop. And O'Reilly attacks Nelson. Boy. McCain says we never... Oh, an article comes out saying McCain was never tortured. On the 6th, History Channel... well, maybe that was where I got the story about it looking like a blimp. I think that was it. They may have mentioned it in that show, that it may have been a blimp. 911, ABC, 911 reporter McWethy dies in a ski accident.
John McWethy's dead?
Yeah.
Oh.
I guess it's him. McWethy, yeah.
Yeah. Steve.
Exxon freezes millions of Venezuelan dollars. How do they do that? That was the day I found out a lot about stuff about Ashland and the link to Solvay, and Pope John Paul and so forth. On the 7th, there's a sugar refinery explosion in Georgia.
Yep. Dixie Crystals.
New Zealand hijacking, woman stabs pilots. Missouri City Council shooting, 6 are dead. And on the 8th, IntraGuard is given the shoot-to-kill authority from the FBI in case of national emergency. And on the 9th, retroactive immunity is given to phone companies by the Senate very quietly. I'm not sure if it was on the 9th, but it was right around that time. And that's that first week. Any bring up anything for you there?
No.
Okay. On the 10th, Yahoo Microsoft story. What are our problems that week? The Gitmo trial comes on. Timor, Obama, eavesdropping, Iran has nukes. There's a recall at Bayer. And so some of our diversions would be what? Swiss art robbery on the 11th. Chavez threatens an oil embargo. Obama's really looking good at this point. It's announced that West Virginia will use interstate cameras to spy on people in cases of whenever they decide to. Bush pushes for eavesdropping immunity again. Bloomberg compares New York Mayor compares global warming to terrorism, and that's exactly what I've been saying all along. That it fills that sort of need for them, because it does feel terroristic. I think every time you hear about it, it just makes you feel anxious. I think. Mm-hmm. What about you? I mean. I think it's designed for that. I mean, you would agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the whole thing is for freaking out, the freak out value.
On the 13th, we had the Iran uranium processing story. They're processing nukes, supposedly. And a big diversion there on the 14th for everyone would be the Illinois shooting, Northern Illinois University shooting. Six students shot. The guy was staying at a travel lodge, which is odd. What's a student doing staying at a travel lodge? I think we talked about that.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'll just move on.
Okay, let me make a correction. That's the individual to whom I was referring with his girlfriend saying...
Oh, right.
Right. Yeah, and that's like, yeah, why is he there? I mean, is it because he can be controlled? Yeah, we did talk about that.
And the only other story that happened that day that would be an embarrassment to the administration would be that there was a recall of trasolol, which is a Bayer drug. 22,000 have been estimated dead since '06 taking that. And I imagine the numbers are higher than that, and that's probably being played down, that amount. Probably more people were killed by it. I don't know what the drug does or anything. But
you hear those ridiculous caveats at the end of when they do these pharmaceutical commercials. It may cause high blood pressure, blah, 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 right? And why don't they just say it may kill your ass? You know? Gosh. Oh, God, they're ghouls.
Yeah, and then a couple of days later, we have that beef recall that you were talking about, 143 million pounds. That's on the 18th. That's the day that the Ruby Oswald tape surfaces in the Frank Crowley building in Dallas, which probably was just a diversionary story. It didn't really go anywhere. That's the day that they announced they're going to shoot down a spy satellite from a Navy ship because it's falling.
Mm-hmm.
Bush apparently made the decision himself.
That can't be. That's impossible.
That's the day that they had the big Dallas refinery explosion at Alon, USA in Big Spring. That was when that was another cog in the wheel of raising the gas prices. On the 19th, Walmart checkout person offends a Muslim woman who's veiled, calls her a terrorist. That makes the news. Obama takes the lead. Willie Nelson's blackballed somehow. Oil goes up to $100 a barrel, and there's a lunar eclipse that night. Or no, the next night, the 20th. So that's going to be a big time of doing these kinds of activities, these ops. And, like, for instance, the lockdown at a Kentucky school that day. And al-Sadr threatens to break the ceasefire. There's an aborted Super Bowl terrorism plot that comes up in the news. MI6 denies that they had anything to do with Diana's death. The Supreme Court limits suits against problems with medical devices. So there's a big giveaway to the pharmachems. And the Serbs attacked the U.S. Embassy. On the next day, the 21st, Gitmo prosecutors say that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, his trial is rigged. And a study comes out from Tufts saying that 911 had a deep psychological impact on people. The 22nd, there's a big stand down at an Obama rally by the Secret Service. Either it really happened or they're floating a story about his assassination, which they're always doing. They're always implying in the media that he's going to get killed. On the 23rd, it's reported that he and Hillary are at each other's throats. And Nader jumped into the presidential race on the 24th. The 25th, the trial begins for cops who shot a New York City groom. Remember that story? That
yes.
Happened on the 1-year anniversary of the last guy they had shot up a million times.
Yeah.
Power outage in southern Florida on the 26th, supposedly related to a nuclear plant. Earthquake in the UK. And Jay Rockefeller writes a letter with some other senators criticizing President Bush about the phone policy. Well, it's just like, you read the letter and you can tell that they're not getting along, the four guys that signed it, that there's a lot of disagreement. And I imagine the disagreement would come from, be based on the fact that one of the guys owns the companies that are doing that eavesdropping.
What do you say, the four who presented the letter were not in agreement?
Right. It's implied in the letter that there is disagreement and that they're going to have to work out the details of it, in spirit. Like, they don't really propose anything. They just say, we're going to try to, we just don't like what Bush is doing. It just seemed like a political, a crass political ploy.
Right.
by the Democrats, but obviously they're not going to do anything, and there is going to be rancor because Rockefeller benefits from it, so he's not going to stop it.
No, it just looks good to the public.
Yeah. On the 27th, 911 hijacker was found to have been booked on future flights after that. All Gandhi. So a lot of these hijackers, are still alive. They really weren't, they just sort of made up some names or stole some identities, and a lot of these guys are still around. Jobless claims go up on the 27th. Oil hits $103 a barrel. Bush lobbies Congress directly on his phone bill for retroactive immunity. On the 28th, there's an Illinois shopping center bomb. A U.S. warship is sent to Lebanon, and there's an anti-Muslim Obama photo flap. Not sure what that was about. You remember that? I don't know. They're always they're always throwing things out there, playing the race card this whole time.
Well,
Ryson is, I got one more item here in February, and then I'll be done. Ryson found at a Vegas motel. Chemical Ali his execution is approved. Prince Harry is taken off the front lines in Afghanistan. And there's a mystery force reported to be affecting Pioneers 10 and 11. Which I think, is probably just an invisible band of, it's sort of like the circular band that you have around these anomalies that seems to cause UFOs, which was, again, that's a study out of Puerto Rico that F.D. Holliday wrote about back in the 70s. And so, anyway, but they throw these stories out because I think they like to mix future and past. So they always have stories about dinosaurs, bones being found, and things happening with NASA and things happening with cloning. Just as there's something to it. There's something about it. They're getting you off the present moment so that your mind can sort of travel around to these limited spots that they've designated for you that are not controversial or will not upset the status quo.
Oh, then is there some kind of also, what would I say, conditioning factor in that too? They're creating this like anthropological continuum or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is something going on that we're not aware of that's embedded in this stuff,
Mm-hmm.